Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about the film Porno Holocaust from 1981. If you're wondering why I'd even see a movie like this, and I'm not like really a porn person or anything like that, I just heard the title and was a little curious, and so it took me a little bit to find it. I was kind of curious what this movie actually was, and if it was like even real. And it's a kind of mashup between porn and horror movies, and it manages to do both really poorly. Very poorly, in fact. It is bad on both fronts. In fact, it's probably more pornography than horror, because it seems to just do that every 5 minutes. It's very much a 70s porn, although it was made in the early 80s, which is kind of just the 70s. It's very much a relic of a different era, but it's kind of an interesting mashup that they probably thought, hey, lots of people who watch horror watch porn, or lots of people who watch movies in general probably watch porn. Wouldn't it be very successful if we put them together and did this? And also probably because they're both very cheap to make, so why not make them both for very cheap, I assume. And that's what they did. In fact, they're actually shooting several porn movies at the exact same time, which is pretty much what you expect from the porn industry. And this was directed by Porn and Gore, an Italian filmmaker who made a lot of movies and a lot of pornography, called Joe D'Amato, and he's apparently very notorious. I've never heard of him because I'm not like an expert in 70s porn, but he made this movie, and it played at the Cannes Film Festival actually in 1981. I'm assuming most people saw it for the title, and that's actually kind of its notoriety through its entire lifespan, really. Anyone I've talked to who's seen it has like, yeah, I saw it in the catalog and I was like, hey, that's funny, I'll buy it, or I'll rent it, or I'll stream it, or whatever. And that's kind of how it's grown in infamy. It shouldn't, because it's awful to watch, including a lot of scenes of people having sex that I wish I hadn't seen. And it's kind of one of those cinematic curiosities I went into that I very much regret, but decided to review anyway and continue watching because, you know, I have to finish the movie, of course. But it's so terrible at both the genres it's trying to do, even though it's really doing one, and ends up being a total mess of filmmaking and ideas and entrepreneurism, to being a kind of clusterfuck, oh, bad term, maybe mess, maybe it's just a terrible movie. It tried to combine two things that you'd think would go together, but the way they mixed it together should have never gone together in the first place. After seeing from a deserted island that they're larger creatures than normal and someone washed up ashore murdered, they've decided to investigate this island that used to be right near a lot of nuclear testing, so they go on an investigation to do that. But before, they have sex lots of times because, you know, it's Porno Holocaust, so what did you think was going to happen? And then they get on the boat, they go to the island. First they have sex a bunch of times, then they look for whatever's there, and then they find a mutated person because him and his family, they tried to evacuate the island and they thought they got everyone, but there was someone left behind. And so this one guy was there as a kid and he grew up now as a mutant person, and he starts killing them and stuff, and then the people have sex more, and then they have to find him and stop him from killing them. That's Porno Holocaust. With a title like Porno Holocaust, this could either be the name of a dumb 13-year-old kid's punk band, or the time that same 13-year-old got all his porn taken away by his mom and then burned up in the fireplace. So basically, I think one of the problems with Porno Holocaust is, and a lot of genres have tried to mix with horror unsuccessfully, some successfully, like noir, for example, that kind of works. Then you have like Western horror combo movies, and those didn't work very well. If you had the right concept and the right director, maybe some of these would. Porno Holocaust, one of its biggest problems is it comes out in 1981, and you think, hey, they're probably going to combine this with the slasher movie because it's 1981, right when the good Friday the 13th are coming out, and you have the slasher boom is currently happening. When you think of cheap horror movies to make, you think of, you know, slasher films, and you think, oh, well, if they're going to make a cheap horror movie, they probably make a slasher film because those are notoriously cheap of all horror movies. But instead they make kind of a B pre-slasher movie type of horror movie, which I wonder when this was actually shot, because it looks so 70s. I wonder if it was shot like before Halloween came out and just got released somewhere in 81. I don't know how porn in the 70s and early 80s got released, but this was shot on film, and Joe D'Amato was actually a long purveyor of porn on film way into the 90s. Actually kind of reminds you of Burt Reynolds in Boogie Nights. But the whole idea of doing something that would be kind of like a 50s B movie or a 60s B horror movie and combining that with porn that wasn't going to work as well. Slasher films obviously have a lot of nudity already in them, and the whole idea that the women who have sex will eventually be stabbed and whatnot, although that's not very like feminist and everything, it's still, that's the whole idea of the slasher movies, you know. And if you had that with a porno, I actually think that could kind of work, to be honest. I think that could work. But the other thing with Porno Holocaust is the porn element of it is pretty hardcore and disgusting, and the people that they chose to watch have sex with is gross. And I'm not an expert in porn. I've pretty much only seen the ones that like deep throat, like the big ones, and like a few other things. I'm not like a big porn person, to be honest, but every time there's like a funny one, I'm like, sure, I'll go back to this. I like to have said I've seen it, so I guess I very publicly, obviously, because I'm making a video for fucking YouTube telling people I've seen Porno Holocaust. But seeing like these shots of like some gross Italian dude from the late 70s, hairy ass taint, is not something I needed in my life, but I voluntarily saw Porno Holocaust, so I guess that's what you sign up for if you're seeing it. The first sex scene is probably the living embodiment of this entire movie. It's this girl jerking off a guy and he comes far too quickly, and you're like, what the hell was that for? And that's kind of like what it is like watching Porno Holocaust. You're sitting there and you're like, what the fuck was, what was this? What were you guys trying to do? This has no relation to Cannibal Holocaust, and a lot of people have brought up that the film Erotic Nights of the Living Dead is a far better melding of the horror and porn genres or types of movie. I think they're genres. And, you know, this does kind of have the thing where they're like, oh, hey, I'm bored. You know, it would cheer you up if we had sex right now. That's dialogue from the movie, pretty much. And there's nothing really to like about it. It was written by George Eastman, who also stars in the film. There's a lot of fucking in it and a lot of schlongs and angles of sex, that like people having sex on a log right near the ocean. I've never looked at a log near the ocean and think, I know what I want to do. Never thought that. But, you know, I wasn't around in the 70s. Culturally, maybe everyone was into fucking on logs. I don't know. But the one thing that I will recommend from this movie is the music by Nico Fidenko, I think, which is really, really good. I really like the music a lot. It scored a lot of things that I would rather not think about, but I would like to think of the music, and it doesn't work as well. And then you see some gross ass shit. The whole idea of this was very entrepreneurial. It's like the idea of some shitty thing people do on that show Shark Tank, and the whole time you're like, who would come up with this crap? And it's like Porno Holocaust. It's like, oh, that could work, and then you see it and you're like, oh no, don't ever do that again, please don't. But the director of this film, he was more concerned with money than making any artistic merit. A line that he's most famous for while making one of his films, Emmanuel's Revenge, while he was the producer, he said, we're not making artsy fartsy crap for intellectual faggots, we're out to make money, which is fairly direct, and while you're watching this movie is probably the only reason he's really making a movie like this, and it makes sense. So I do not doubt that he said that. It's kind of a regrettable quote, and I don't know. Do I recommend anyone ever see Porno Holocaust? If you're willing to go down, bad choice of words, if you're willing to watch this movie, then I guess you can. But if the whole idea of this is just like, I don't know, then you should never see Porno Holocaust. And most people probably shouldn't. It should just be for dumbass completionists like me who are like, oh, I'm going to see Porno Holocaust. Blah! It's a terrible porno. It's a terrible horror movie. The only thing that you can really take away from it is the ridiculously hilarious scenes. Like one time the monster guy just walks up to a lady and hits her in the head. You could have heard him coming. I mean, he wasn't like sneaking. He was just like walks up and goes bap, and then she like goes down, and I mean, she doesn't go down. She does, but not then. It's like a whole thing. This is only for viewers who would be interested in maybe seeing something like this and telling people they saw a notorious title like this. It's like kind of a title movie, and that's really the only thing that's good about it. Cannibal Holocaust is a difficult watch, but it's at least a good movie. Porno Holocaust is not a good watch for any of the reasons that it's titled that or anything at all, other than the funny, laughable, ridiculous parts. But watching a bunch of Italian dudes' taints and sex with gross people to get to that, I don't really think is worth it. And I can kind of understand. I was like, how did society in the world forget about Porno Holocaust? And then you watch Porno Holocaust, and you're like, why didn't society in the world forget about Porno Holocaust? This was awful, and it was hard to stay awake during, and I was not aroused at all or scared. So failure on all fronts for Porno Holocaust. It's just like that guy getting jerked off by a girl and coming too early, and then you're just like, what the fuck was that? And that's the whole time you're going to be saying that during this movie, but not in like that cool cult movie way. More in that way where you're like, let's never speak of this again, and walk away and just tell people we saw the title and change the subject when they want to actually talk about the movie, which is probably best for everyone and society in general, and for my own personal dignity, which I probably lost by making this video, talking about it, and actually watching this movie. So if you have seen Porno Holocaust and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.